Hi everyone, today on Steve's Garage I'll be replacing the rear pads and rotors on a refreshed first-gen Ford Fusion. I'm not familiar enough with these cars to know the differences between model years, but this one happens to be a 2010. Get your car jacked up and safely supported, and then we can cover the tools you'll need to complete the job. Just a quick disclaimer, your sizes may differ than what's listed here, so double check before you go out and buy any new tools. I've got a 19mm socket for the lugs, and that's also what I use the impact gun for. You can't use it for the brake job itself, so just make sure you have a breaker bar for the lugs. You'll need 13 and 14mm wrenches and sockets. I used a combination of the two to get the work done, but you could probably get away with just wrenches if that's all you've got. I also used an 18mm wrench. Make sure you have some kind of brush to clean up the rust and corrosion. A hammer is never a bad idea. Some kind of disc brake quiet. I use Never Seez because I live in the land of salt and rust. Caliper pin grease, some brake clean, and last but not least, something to retract the brake caliper piston. The rear piston on these cars are not just a push-in type, so you can't use something like channel locks or a C-clamp. It has to be rotated to retract. You can use one of these little squares, and I have in the past, but I don't really like them. This kit from Harbor Freight isn't a bad price, and if you're doing brakes more than once, it might be worth picking one up. But at the end of the day, either one works, so with that, let's get started. With the car safely in the air, use the 19mm socket to remove the lugs and get the wheel out of your way. And here you can see why I'm doing brakes. The pads technically have some life left, but the rotors are absolutely shot. These don't have a set screw, so I'm just going to spray some penetrating fluid in there because I already know these are rusted solid to the hub. Moving to the caliper slide pins, use a 14mm to loosen those up. The caliper bracket bolts are a 13mm, and you can crack those loose, but don't remove them yet. You can use the 18mm wrench to counterhold the slide pins if you need to, but once I cracked mine loose, they were loose enough to hold by hand and remove. With the slide pins out, you can move the caliper out of the way and remove the brake pads. Checking out the brake pads real quick, you can see that even though they have some life left, they are badly grooved. The backing plate has fallen off this one, and the other one is about to rust through. I have seen a piston crush a brake pad when the backing plate fails, so if your pads look like this, definitely replace them no matter how much life is left. Moving back over to the car, we can now remove the caliper bracket. The upper bolt is easily accessed, but the lower one you'll need a thin wrench or grab a socket and extension and access it through the hole in the suspension arm. With the caliper bracket out of your way, the rotor should come right off, but that wasn't the case for me. I actually have a video explaining how to pop a seized rotor off using some nuts and bolts, and it's much easier than beating it with a hammer or trying to torch it off. I actually keep some hardware lying around for this exact purpose since it's pretty common where I live. Once the rotor is off, clean up the face of your hub, especially if there's a bunch of corrosion on it. You can do this by hand, but in this case it would have been much easier to do with a wire wheel on a grinder. Now you can bring the caliper bracket and slide pins over to the workbench to clean those up. Remove the slide pins from the bracket so you can clean and re-grease them. You should also inspect the slides for any kind of damage or inconsistencies in the shape. If they have any low spots, the bracket won't float properly and it can cause your pads to wear out prematurely. These brackets do have small metal clips that you insert for the pads to ride on, but it's still a good idea to clean up the brackets, especially if they look like these did. You can use something like a flathead screwdriver or wire brush to clean up some of the corrosion and make sure the new clips fit properly. If for some reason they don't, you can also replace the brackets. Don't forget to inspect the slide pin boots. If they're in bad shape or torn, they should be replaced as well because they keep debris out of the slide pins. Once the brackets are cleaned up, you can install the new clips. You can't really install these the wrong way, but it can be confusing. The shoulder area that bends down away from the clip faces outward on the bracket. It kind of follows the shape of the bracket and should easily pop into place. You shouldn't have to force anything. Lastly, since we're here, you can re-grease the slide pins and install them back into the caliper bracket. Moving back over to the caliper, if you see little slots on a piston like this, chances are it has to be rotated in and not just pushed in with something like pliers or a clamp. If you're using the little cube, find the side that fits the piston, put it on the ratchet, and wind your piston in. I'll be using the Harbor Freight kit, so in this case I'll find the correct disc that fits the piston, attach it to the rest of the tool, and start turning. The piston should start retracting pretty easily, and you'll feel when it bottoms out. Once it's wound in, make sure there's no damage to the boot. If there is, now you've got to replace a caliper. It's also not a bad idea to look over the brake hose. This one looks fine, so I won't bother changing it today. Now we can begin the installation process. Start by cleaning off your new rotor. Sorry about the focus here, I guess all the brake clean got to me. Then you can spray the back of the pads with some disc brake quiet. Coming over to the hub, I'm applying some Never Seez to try and make the next guy's job a little easier. I was a little heavy-handed here. If you've never used this stuff before, a little goes a long way. Hang your new rotor on the wheel studs and we can move on to installing the rest. Grab your caliper bracket and reinstall that. Make sure to tighten the bolts down well. I ran them in with the wrench and then grabbed my little breaker bar to snug them up. Install your new pads, making sure they're sitting properly in the spring clips. Then put your caliper on top and tighten down the slide pins. I didn't have to counterhold them when loosening, but you may have to when tightening. Unless you have a really thin wrench, chances are it's too wide to fit in there once it starts getting tight, but at that point the pressure should hold and you can snug it up just fine. And with that, your new pads and rotors are installed. Remember that with the retracted pistons, it'll take a few pumps to regain a proper brake pedal. Don't forget to pump the pedal a bit before pulling away for your test drive. I hope this video helped you out. Feel free to leave any questions or comments below. Thanks so much for watching.